What year was the Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, enacted in Singapore? A. 2010, B. 2012, C. 2015, D. 2020. Correct answer, B. 2012. The PDPA applies to organizations managing personal data within Singapore. What is the extent of its applicability? A. Only to organizations with a physical presence in Singapore. B. Only to digital data management. C. To all organizations, regardless of their physical presence. D. To government agencies only. Correct answer, C. To all organizations, regardless of their physical presence. How does the PDPA define personal data? A. Information about individuals below 18 years old. B. Data about an individual who can be identified from that data. C. Data exclusively pertaining to corporate entities. D. Publicly available information only. Correct answer, B. Data about an individual who can be identified from that data. Under the PDPA, which type of information is exempt when used solely for business purposes? A. Financial data. B. Business contact information. C. Health information. D. Educational records. Correct answer, B. Business contact information. Organizations must cease to retain personal data or anonymize it when it is no longer necessary for any business or legal purpose. What obligation does this describe? A. Consent obligation. B. Notification obligation. C. Retention limitation obligation. D. Accuracy obligation. Correct answer, C. Retention limitation obligation. What is the role of data intermediaries under the PDPA? A. They are exempt from all data protection obligations. B. They are liable for data protection obligations as any other organization. C. They process personal data on behalf of another organization and are exempt from most data protection obligations. D. They must obtain consent for collection, use, and disclosure of personal data on behalf of organizations. Correct answer, C. They process personal data on behalf of another organization and are exempt from most data protection obligations. What restrictions does the PDPA impose on the transfer of personal data outside of Singapore? A. No restrictions, data can be freely transferred. B. Consent is not required for overseas data transfer. C. Organizations must ensure the receiving party has comparable protection to that established by the PDPA. D. Personal data can only be transferred within ASEAN countries. Correct answer, C. Organizations must ensure the receiving party has comparable protection to that established by the PDPA. Who is responsible for enforcing the PDPA? A. The Singapore Police Force. B. The Ministry of Information and Communications. C. The Personal Data Protection Commission, PDPC. D. The Attorney General of Singapore. Correct answer, C. The Personal Data Protection Commission, PDPC. What new criminal offences were introduced in the 2020 amendments to the PDPA? A. Unauthorized collection of personal data. B. Egregious mishandling of personal data. C. Use of personal data without consent for marketing. D. Failure to report a data breach. Correct answer, B. Egregious mishandling of personal data. What enhanced framework did the 2020 amendments to the PDPA introduce? A. Data anonymization standards. B. Data breach notification. C. Data portability requirements. D. Consent withdrawal procedures. Correct answer, B. Data breach notification. Organizations are obligated to make public their data protection policies, practices, and complaints process under which PDPA obligation. A. Openness obligation. B. Accountability obligation. C. Individual rights obligation. D. Protection obligation. Correct answer, A. Openness obligation. What is required from organizations before disclosing personal data to onshore third parties under the PDPA? A. A court order. B. The individual's consent. C. Notification to the PDPC. D. Anonymization of the data. Correct answer, B. The individual's consent. How does the PDPA treat business contact information supplied by individuals in their personal capacity? A. It is fully exempt from the PDPA. B. It is considered personal data. C. It is not covered when used for business purposes only. D. It requires explicit consent for use. Correct answer, B. It is considered personal data. What does extraterritorial applicability of the PDPA mean? A. It applies only within Singapore's territorial waters. B. It applies to actions outside Singapore that affect Singaporean residents. C. It applies to organizations outside Singapore managing personal data of Singapore residents. D. It does not apply to any data processed outside Singapore. Correct answer, C. It applies to organizations outside Singapore managing personal data of Singapore residents. Which PDPA obligation directly addresses the issue of data minimization? A. Collection limitation obligation. B. Use limitation obligation. C. Disclosure limitation obligation. D. Accuracy obligation. Correct answer, A. Collection limitation obligation. Under the PDPA, how must organizations handle the personal data of deceased individuals? A. The same as living individuals' data for 50 years. B. They are exempt from any PDPA obligations. C. The PDPA applies for 10 years after the individual's death. D. Immediate destruction of data is required. Correct answer, C. The PDPA applies for 10 years after the individual's death. What are organizations required to do under the PDPA if they no longer need personal data for any business or legal purpose? A. Store it indefinitely. B. Sell it to third parties. C. Destroy it or anonymize it. D. Report to the PDPC. Correct answer, C. Destroy it or anonymize it. Which of the following best describes the obligation of organizations to respond to requests by data subjects under their statutory rights in the PDPA? A. Optional. B. Mandatory. C. Only if the request is made within 2 years. D. Only for data collected after 2012. Correct answer, B. Mandatory. In the context of the PDPA, what does comparable protection refer to? A. Data protection measures that are identical to Singapore's. B. Protection that is similar in scope and effect to the PDPA's protections when transferring personal data outside Singapore. C. The minimum data protection standard globally accepted. D. Protections that are negotiated between Singapore and other countries. Correct answer, B. Protection that is similar in scope and effect to the PDPA's protections when transferring personal data outside Singapore. What significant change did the 2020 amendments bring to the PDPA in terms of penalties for non-compliance? A. Introduction of criminal penalties. B. A reduction in fines. C. An increase in financial penalties. D. The elimination of financial penalties. Correct answer, C. An increase in financial penalties.